Lia Thomas, eller William Thomas som han först hette, är en amerikansk man som identifierar sig som kvinna och har tillåtits tävla i simning mot kvinnor i USA. Han blev känd över hela världen när den här bilden spreds på internet. När Lia Thomas tävlade mot andra män så gick det inte särskilt bra. Men när han gick över till att tävla mot kvinnor, eftersom han själv säger sig vara en, så hamnade han snabbt på prispallen. Idag ska jag prata med Kim Jones, en av medgrundarna till organisationen Icons Women. Hon började engagera sig mot män i kvinnosport efter att hennes egen dotter tvingades tävla i simning mot självaste Lia Thomas.
Thank you, Kim Jones, for joining us today. So, your daughter is an Ivy League swimmer, and she had to compete against the infamous trans athlete Lia Thomas, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So, during and after this event, with your daughter having to compete against a biological male, what was going on in your head by that time? What was your and your daughter's initial reaction to this?
So when we first heard about it, my reaction was just of bafflement. And then I believed, as did my daughter and most of the people involved in the sport of swimming, that the people in positions of power and leadership would take care of this and wouldn't let it happen, because it was obviously and blatantly unfair, and it clearly, removed all of the integrity from women's competition to have a male in their competition.
Right. When your daughter was going to compete against Lia Thomas, did she know him beforehand, or was it a complete surprise?
It was a complete surprise for the year. It wasn't she had weeks to prepare, knowing this was happening to other women around the country and in the league. It was very upsetting. She spent days trying to figure out how she could present herself stoically and do her job for her team. She had already been pulled into a meeting by the school telling her not to discuss her feelings on this issue, not to converse with media, telling her that it was her place to do what she had signed up to do, which is compete, and that she really didn't have a voice in the matter with something that was happening to her. It took her, it was a singular transformative experience. It was humiliating and removed all of the integrity and competition that she had, spent a decade and a half working towards, just reducing women to a sideshow because their sport doesn't deserve fairness. And the female athletes were expected to compare their bodies and what their bodies were capable of to a male standard, which is outrageous.
Yeah, because later also Lia Thomas was nominated by University of Pennsylvania as one of 2 candidates for the National College Athletics Association's Woman of the Year award. And what kind of signal does that send to young, ambitious female athletes like your daughter?
I think it sends a terrible message. It is a message that women must step aside for men when they have desires that will be placed above women. It says that male accomplishments and male physiques are rewarded in spite of women's abilities and in place of women. It reduces women to being defined by the desires and thoughts in a man's head. It reduces our ability to judge to celebrate what the female athlete is capable of and the limits of the female body. It tells us that men's accomplishments and men's bodies are far more important because men get their celebrations and their champions, but women don't actually deserve them if a man wants them. It is a horrendous message to women.
And after all of this happened, you yourself took action against this. You co-founded an organization called Icons, the Independent Council on Women's Sports. And what is the core purpose of this group, you would say? What is your goal?
Our goal is to exist for the next century or more, and to be a place where female athletes can seek help when they're fighting sex-based discrimination in sport of any kind. Right now, we believe this is the most important issue. Women's sports do not exist without a fair and level playing field and without a guarantee that women And female athletes have equal respect relative to their male counterparts. And as soon as we allow male biological advantage into the female category, there is no such thing as fair sports and respect for female athletes. So, but the vision is to have a network that uplifts women in sports and that will be around to protect and enable women to succeed on the athletic fields.
I love that. I love that. So when you talk to female athletes, what do they say about this whole situation? Do they support you?
Oh, yes. I've run into very few people that have any, I mean, they're ready. People are hungry for an organization or a group of people or for individuals to step up and state the obvious and defend the respect and fair treatment of women around the globe, but particularly in the public arena of sports. These women and girls are putting so much into their passion, and they deserve to be treated fairly.
Of course. So here in Sweden, many people believe that as long as a biological male is on hormone treatment and testosterone blockers, they play on the same terms. And I also saw a debate on Vice the other day where one of the trans feminists argued that all of our bodies are so different. Like a biological man can be shorter than a biological female. So that sex in sports doesn't matter. But how would you explain the differences to those who really believe this?
Well, first of all, there is zero scientific evidence that says that male biological advantage can be mitigated. And in fact, every single study and every single publicized report in a peer-reviewed journal has shown the exact opposite. Male biological advantage is minimally, if at all, in the measurable areas mitigated. So it's and many of those situations where many of those strength categories that are measured can be overcome with training over time. Men and women are built completely differently, and there are whole systems of the body and whole advantageous attributes that males have that are not even remotely touched by testosterone suppression or estrogen. The first being, of course, height. So we'll talk about what you just said with some, of course, there are some men that are shorter than some women. The Y chromosome and male development gives men an extra 5 inches on average. So that's an enormous difference. If someone was born, the same person was born female versus born male, the difference in their height would be massive off the bat. That is not touched by testosterone suppression, particularly after growth. Puberty blockers, in fact, work by leaving the growth plates open. So that means that someone who is on puberty blockers, and this is why they are used in precocious puberty, it allows an individual to grow taller over that time. So and then there's heart, there's lungs, there's Q angles, there's the way the elbows and joints are formed, there's shoulders, there's skeletal, there's bone density, there are cardiovascularly, there is no mitigating the male advantage. So when we talk about someone, you say, there's someone who's short, a male who's short, and there's women who are tall, and they should be allowed to compete against each other just fine. That doesn't make any sense at all. Missy Franklin and Ryan Lochte are the exact same height, the exact same wingspan. They had the exact same elite level training. They both grew up through the national programs in swimming here in the United States. And Missy Franklin, who was a world record holder, Ryan Lochte, also a world record holder at the very top of their sport. And Ryan would beat Missy by more than half a pool length. Additionally, in running, when you look at those who are of similar height and similar weight, men outperform, there are thousands of high school boys who outperform the fastest women in the world. This does not mean that the female athletes are not exceptional and deserving in their own right. They are simply working from an entirely different biological constraint. So to say that we can equate males and females is preposterous and one of the most male-centered, misogynistic statements an individual can make, because our physical reality, our female reality, is not something any male can live with or understand. It's an impossibility. So to say that we have all of these men winning championships in sports, their teams are full. There are individuals in the NBA here in America who are 5'3" to over 7 feet. There are no women in the NBA. That is because of male biological advantage. That is because of strength. It is because of how the body is built. It is a progress that begins at conception in the womb. And there's no undo, there is no reverse. A male may hamper himself somewhat through pharmaceuticals, but a pharmaceutically hampered male in no way equates to an elite or even athletic female. These are two separate entities. It is like asking a para-athlete who's at an elite level and competing and winning world championships to compare themselves to an able-bodied individual who's on chemotherapy. That is an insult to the abilities of the para-athlete, just as asking a woman to compare herself to a pharmaceutically challenged or doped down male is an insult to women.
Right. So did anything change in America when it comes to competing in swimming after all of the media coverage and all the people speaking up against this, or is it still the same?
No, progress has been made. The United States swimming was under a lot of pressure when the public is not going to tolerate seeing men state that they want to compete and beat women. Over a period of time, this is not a sustainable policy. As it comes more and more to the forefront and to people's attention, decent people, fathers, husbands, men who, good men are not going to, who recognize the difference between their physical development and a woman's physical development, and who respect women, are not going to be okay with seeing women treated this way. So sport is the public spectacle of the difference between the sexes. We either acknowledge and respect and celebrate what women are capable of physically, or we don't. You have to, it's a public statement from everyone saying, oh, I believe that women deserve respect and fair treatment, or I don't. It's a yes or no question for when you're witnessing this. And so to have a governing body like USA Swimming have to face this on television, on nationally broadcasted television, they had to step in and change the rules, which they did. And there's still a work in progress. FINA then stepped in, which is the international governing body, a little bit later, and declared, at around age 12, I think they said, and male puberty, that categories should be sex-based. And the USA Swimming also changed their rules. I know they're also discussing them further and deciding whether to just adopt FINAs, which are less complicated than what they rolled out. Those policies still don't go far enough, but they were a good first step.
Right, because I can't help but wonder, why even have one league for women and one league for men if there's not going to be any differences? Then you can just open it up and everyone can compete against everyone.
No, I think people don't understand that that's exactly what they're advocating for. If we're talking about creating categories based on identities or what people believe about themselves, we are just simply defending the idea of ignoring biological reality for all humans, which is, again, male-centered. We will be left with men ages 18 to 35 dominating sport and receiving and reaping all of the rewards.
Exactly. So in the Swedish National Athletics Association, they have started to let youth athletes define their own sex or gender and compete in national competitions based on that decision. So if you could give any advice to Swedish politicians, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to stop ignoring that the sky is blue. I would tell them that women deserve access to fair competition and access to sport, and that goes for the women who make the podium, and it goes for the last woman who makes the, junior varsity team in high school. She deserves her spot. She does not deserve to be gaslit to believe that a male's personal identity or personal beliefs about himself or his desires supersede her rights to be treated fairly and to have those equal opportunities. To state that women should step aside for males who want to take their place is, it's chauvinistic and misogynistic. There is no right side of history for a government that's going to discriminate against women on the basis of sex. It's time to grow a backbone and step up and state the truth. Men cannot be women, boys cannot be girls, and these girls and these women should be treated just as fairly as their male counterparts who already have full and competitive teams.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think that's a wrap.